that relationship of a private contractor to the Forest Service for air operations, can you take us through that? How does that work?
Well,
You bid every year, or what happens there?
It changes a lot, you know, like Johnson Flying Service was a contractor, private contractor. I flew for them for 1 year, but Forest Service can't afford, or couldn't afford, and still can't, I think, sometimes, to own their own fleet of jumper airplanes, as well as they can't afford to own their own fleet of helicopters or air tankers. And that changes somewhat from time to time, but you can't hire good people and keep expensive airplanes sitting on the ground on the winter times when you're not using them. Yeah. And so that's how the contracts work out. And once I retired from the Forest Service, I went to work for a contractor in Missoula that flew Twin Otters for the next 15 years.
But safety, it was a big deal, right? I mean, you'd have to get inspected all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Even though the FAA throws up its hands in horror when they ask you what you're primarily doing with those airplanes, other than hauling people, dropping cargo and jumpers. Well, they really don't want to have anything to do with that. But the contracting people in the Forest Service and the BLM require that you be certificated to do that before you can bid a contract. You have to have the training and all the maintenance and everything else done and all the management in place before that you can even bid the contract.
Yeah, I remember that it was important to the jumpers to have a aviation contractor that had a good reputation for maintenance.
Right.
I mean, it just is a matter of confidence more than anything.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, the Forest Service has their own inspectors, and they do the inspection for jumper configuration or retardant configuration or anything else, like with helicopters and stuff like that. But the FAA kind of washes their hands of it. If that airplane, before it went into that configuration, was all approved by them for hauling passengers or cargo or anything like that. And then you can change things around, put different kind of seats in there or no seats at all, static lines, fly around with the door open, things like that, which FAA does not like to get involved in.
Yeah, yeah. So how long did you do that?
Well, I started flying full-time in '62.
And you said you were made captain in '46, but you
I made captain in '46.
No, you made captain in not '46, but what, '66?
Oh no, in the C-46 I made captain.
Oh, in the C-46. Yeah. Okay, I got it. Okay.
And then I made captain in DC-3 also, and the Caribou, which he had. So got type ratings in all three of those airplanes. ATP type ratings. So.
What does ATP mean?
Airline transport pilot.
I see. And why was it important to be captain? I mean, you're the guy in charge. You're the pilot.
Well,
what does it mean to be a captain in one of those airplanes?
You're in charge of the airplane. What I'm saying, you're the pilot in command.
And that award, that status is given you by the company or by?
Yeah, if you've earned it, but you have to take in some larger companies, the FAA will always have to give you the type rating. They'll always have to test you for, can you fly this in accordance with the airline transport regulations.
Okay, so you started out piloting in '62, and so for how long did you do that?
I stayed with Intermountain until they sold out Evergreen in 1975, and then I went back to the Forest Service as a pilot, and I was based at Marana. So
the Forest Service had its own pilots?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What were they doing down at Marana? What was the Forest Service there?
Well, that's what they call the West Zone. The regional, that's in Region 3, Forest Service Region 3, and that covers basically all of Arizona and all of New Mexico. And the regional headquarters are in Albuquerque. And that's in a fairly fast airplane, that's an hour or more flight from Albuquerque to Marana, and there was seemingly like a lot more fire activity and aviation activity in Arizona than there was in New Mexico, just because there's more people there and because it's lower and drier and everything like that. So they set up what they call the West Zone Air Unit consisted of usually 2 or 3 pilots, including a helicopter pilot and a mechanic. And basically, we took care of all the inspections and flight checks and the mission flying for Arizona. Although in the summer, when we had a lot of air tanker activity going on, or Smokejumper activity in Silver City and stuff like that, we also covered that too. So,
I think,
yeah.
so did you retire out of the Forest Service then?
Yes, I did retire in 1990. Retired, it's a mandatory retirement. I retired at 56.
And what have you been doing since then?
Well, I went to work the following summer in 91 for an outfit called Leading Edge Aviation. Or actually, at that time, it was Empire Aviation. And they hired me to replace the Twin Otter pilot they were having problems with in Grangeville. And I went there, and then Leading Edge bought out Empire, or yeah, I guess bought them out. And then I was the first pilot hired by Leading Edge Aviation because I'd just been on the contract that I was supposed to go back to. So I went back to Grangeville. I was in Grangeville from 91 through 97, with 94 being I went to West Yellowstone instead. And then from 99 through 98, I went to work for the BLM, or not for the BLM, for BLM contract down in the Great Basin, because Leading Edge didn't have a Forest Service contract going for them. So then in 99, I went back to Leading Edge, back to Grangeville again, and I was in Grangeville until I retired in 94 every summer, or 04.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So when you're looking back on it, now, you didn't tell me when you first got exposed to the Forest Service. When did you first go to work for them?
I went to work for them when I graduated from, not graduated, I was a junior in high school. And I went to work for the Forest Service. They sent me to Moose Creek District, which at that time was part of the Bitterroot National Forest. It's now part of the Nez Perce National Forest. And after about a month on trail crew, they put me on a lookout named Gardner, and that's where I stayed until I had to go back to high school, my senior year.
So you started out as a lookout?
Yeah, trail crew lookout.
Yeah. So looking back over those years, from when you were 17 till you retired, finally retired, I mean, and since, but what's your thinking on the impact being a smoke jumper had on your life, or what did you get out of it? Or?
Well, I tell you, I've been involved with smoke jumpers all my life, it seems like, since I was 17 years old. I know and remember and have a lot of friends with the organization. And we're pretty tight, most of us, and I think it had a great impact. For instance, one of the big life choices I made is I had the opportunity with Intermountain and the short time with Evergreen to fly the big iron, so to speak, the DC-6s, later the Electras, the jets and stuff like that. I had the opportunity to do that, and a lot of guys just jumped at that. But I also had the choice of staying with the Smokejumper program, and I chose the Smokejumper program.
And why was that?
I just liked it better. The what do you call the large aircraft contracts? It seems like you're gone all the time. You know, like a couple of years, I counted them up. I had over 200 days of documented per diem that I was away from home, 200 days a year. And then I was raising a family and everything else, and I chose to stay with them because of that more than anything else, and because I liked it also.
Well, you kept your family in the Bitterroot the whole time? Or?
No. We stayed in the Tucson until I transferred from Region 3 to Region 1 in 1985. And then I moved my family. I still had a house in Missoula, so we moved back in there and I stayed there until I retired from flying.
Now you're back in Bitterroot.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you very much.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
No problem.